Geoffrey Thorne and Marco Santucci put Jon Stewart on a new mission as the Emerald Guard faces off against the new God Esak one final time inside his dark sectors. Geoffrey Thorne both finishes up his huge sci-fi adventure story he's been telling with Jon Stewart since Future State ended and begins a new story for the cosmically powered hero. As someone who's been dipping in and out of the run throughout its entire tenure, Thorne does a great job catching everyone up on what's been going on with Jon and who he's been fighting and what the deal is with his whole power and the Green Lanterns around him. You still need a little bit of base knowledge regarding Jon's new role as an Ascended One and his new powers, but the story naturally goes to a place where that is briefly touched upon as well, and you're kind of told what its deal is. I thoroughly enjoyed Jon being the new big sci-fi action adventure Green Lantern as of late, and changing things up with his new powers, even new lantern weapons instead of rings, really keeps things fresh and interesting. Thorne also pulls deep from Jon's history in DCU, returning the planet Xanchi to the universe and giving Jon a second chance to make things right on the planet he couldn't save all those years ago, and if that wasn't enough, it also means his wife Katma is back alive and well and out there for him to find again, which adds a personal investment to the story for Jon in saving all of these dark sectors so he can finally find his wife again. Marco Santucci's artwork was perfectly suited for the large-scale sci-fi action, covering the pages in wonderful colours and exciting action, but never forgetting the quieter character moments between Jon and the villain, and I like that we actually got Jon defeating the villain in a way that wasn't just punching and kicking, and it gave Marco a chance to really shine with his art and do some really cool colourful sequences. I love the new looks Jon and his guard have as well, adopting an almost monk-like robes there at the end of the issue, along with some cool looking battle armor that complements the hero's swords and weaponry really well. Jon Stewart, The Emerald Knight issue 1 was an exciting end to Thorne's recent Jon Stewart story and a great beginning to something new, leaning hard into the sci-fi adventure aspects of the hero to create a thrilling first new issue. I'm going to give this issue an 8.5 out of 10. Jon Stewart, The Emerald Knight issue 1 heads 2 years into the future where on the planet Ektos, a being talks about how the barrier is God's gift and saves the faithful who will shape the future. The voice says that God wants them to take Ektos and convert the people, so Phalanx and his soldiers descend on the planet. Above them, a green vortex opens and Jon Stewart and the Emerald Guard arrive, attacking Phalanx and his winged soldiers. The guards split up and begin protecting the people, and seeing to the portal Phalanx came through is closed, utilizing giant knife constructs to carve it up. Jon tries to get through to Phalanx, telling him that fighting Esak's control is what he needs to do, but the villain refuses to listen, telling him that Esak is life and law. Jon uses his newly acquired cosmic powers to blast Phalanx back towards the portal as Esak says that he is saving this cosmos, and Jon is making it very difficult for him. The being reveals themselves to Jon, saying that Jon has scoured 3 of his crucibles and destroyed the Lightbringer, the Dreamweaver, and the Torture Crone, and now even as the Ascended One, he will not scour anymore, and his Orion, Black Racer, Metron, and Isaiah will rise, and all will be as the source intends. Suddenly, some of the innocent people on Ektos are possessed as the Lanterns notice something is wrong with the gate they are trying to close. Suddenly, power explodes from it, entering all of the little aliens below as the Lanterns realize that they have run right into a trap. Ektos explodes, but in the debris, the Lanterns have managed to save a single city, containing it within a construct. Kens is angered that they fell for the trap and they need weapons, not the green orbs they have, thinking that one ring would just be enough. The others tell her that they haven't had rings in years and this is the duty they signed up for. Kens knows she didn't sign up for an endless war, as Jon appears, stabilizing the sphere and telling his team that this is all his fault. He turns from his cosmic form back into his human form, assuring them that the city is safe and they are enough survivors to keep the species going. Kens reminds Jon that this is the 4th dark sector they have freed, equaling out to trillions saved all up. She asks if that's enough for Jon, and if enough of them have died already, but Jon knows it's not, since if Esak is successful even once, it will be their end. Kens doesn't care if he wants to recreate the new gods, since all the other races worship them in one way or another, and John has to admit that they were outplayed here, and they were just a couple of broken lanterns and one bright light. Ken storms off, and Kilowog tells John to let her go and cool off since she's frustrated. John knows they all are frustrated, and he was played like a rookie as Lonar appears, finding it amazing that for someone who hasn't even lived a full century, John has accomplished so much. Hanu thinks that the new god should have stuck around, and they could have used him in the battle, but Lonar knows he isn't meant for battle, and his quest is the journey and pathways. Lonar says that their journey has reached another fork, and the struggle with Esak has taken a turn. He reminds John that the villain is a literal god, and they are creatures of the source, and Esak sees the entire universe and the bleed and everything in between. Lonar shows the strange trendles in the air, and John recognizes them as hypertime, something the other lanterns know nothing about. John explains it by comparing the source to an open ocean, and a river that flows from it spreads into different parts that make up different multiverses, and the smaller diversions, the streams, can't make universes and quickly return to the source, these being hypertime, which Esak collects and folds them together to make dark sectors, his own pocket universes. Lonar reveals that while the people they save in these universes are indeed real, they are hypertime variants of real people who live in the main universe, and Esak needs their life energy to create his new gods. Kilowog knows that Esak is from New Genesis, and those people don't kill except for the other people of Apocalypse. John figures that Esak thinks that killing these variants is some loophole, since he's not actually killing others, and it doesn't portray his nature as a god, since he doesn't see them as people. Lonar knows that as the universe grows and changes, so do the new gods, and while the new gods are still around, Esak has become unhappy of who they have become and how they have evolved, seeing them as corrupted now. John knows that he is trying to strip it all back to basics and restart anew using the hypertime strands. Lonar tells him that the source can create new gods, and when the multiverse changes, so do they, which is why he has decided to become the god of journeys, and that gives him great power, but greater limitations too. He knows until Esak chooses which god he will be, he will remain unfettered, as he is the god of nothing right now, which is just another loophole he is exploiting. John learns that if one of these neo-gods is created by Esak, they will splinter reality at its very foundation, and it will all come crashing down. John wishes that Lonar told him this all before, but the new god knows that it was the restrictions on him, but John, as an ascended one, isn't a god, so he doesn't have the same restrictions Lonar does. John meets up with Kens, wanting to talk weapon upgrades with her, as later John trains with Kens and the others, giving them new sword constructs to train with. Lonar can tell that John is tired thanks to him funneling a lot of his power into making the weapons, meaning that he is still recharging. He reveals that the swords are all real constructs like the city sphere around them, and they could only make 8 of them, but that's plenty more than he needs. He reveals that while he's acting as the central power battery for 300 Emerald Guards, all that power is now in those 8 weapons, meaning the rest of the guard will stand down and live in the city sphere where it's safe until they get back. Kens is slammed into the ground hard by the blast from 5 other guardsmen, but the woman loves the new weapons, but Kilowog thinks they need to really figure out a plan since they have no idea where Esak is. Lonar knows he can take them to the being able to open a portal to him. Guardsmen know that this is it, and Esak dies today since that's the only option. John is hesitant about killing another person, but knows it needs to end, telling the team to rest up while he recharges his power. Lonar assures John that the plan is solid, but John wishes he thought of it 2 years ago. Lonar knows he was far too green to carry it out then, as John asks why the being is actually helping them like this now. Lonar says that he likes this universe and he won't see it die because his cousin refuses to evolve. He hesitates to tell John, but reveals the world Esak has pulled out of hypertime to hold his warbringer is Xanshi, the world John couldn't save decades prior. On the newly returned Xanshi, Phalanx leads his army against a group of boom tubes that open above the sky, which spit out the Emerald Guard and the armored John, who takes the fight to Phalanx, telling him he has no time for him, so he just blows right through him, leaving Phalanx broken in space for the rest of the guardsmen to deal with as he confronts Esak on the newly made Orion monument down below. The giant monument blasts John, ripping out his armor, as John is found by Esak on the ground, who tells the hero that he is too late, but he is still very useful, knocking John out and taking him for himself. John awakens in a strange place where a younger version of Esak tells him not to be afraid of this, since nothing is as it was, and there is a constant chaotic cycle of crises and change. It reveals to John that they are in a memory of New Genesis, or what it was like before change, but the Warbringer will bring it back to him. John tells him that he's murdered real living people, but Esak doesn't see them as murdering, more like rebuilding and recombining, proclaiming that this is the life equation manifest. John tells him to stop this illusion, and Esak does, telling the hero that when he consumed the Godstorm, John should have realized that he is now linked to the source and is a living battery, and now Esak doesn't need to convert the people into energy, he can just use John. John asks why Xanshi was brought back, so the new god explains that it's a crux world, and John would never have been able to get through 3 of his crucibles had it contained one, and he would never have gotten to the 4th without Lonar's help. He knows that Xanshi died because of John, but now it's back, and this is the promise he brings, wondering if John misses his wife Katmatui, and she is still alive and well on the planet, and everything can be as it was under his god's will. Esak finds out that John is only at half power though, thinking that he should be at full charge now, but suddenly Kens and the other lanterns smash into the base, apprehending Esak and freeing John. Esak can't believe that John spent half his powers making god weapons for mere mortals, as another John Stewart appears, saying that he also spent half the power making something else as well. He reveals to Esak that the gods aren't the only ones capable of playing with hypertime, and while he doesn't have the gods' finesse, they had enough power to create a variant of John and split their power between each other. Esak thinks the hero is clever, knowing that if he is killed though, the source will just resurrect him and he'll be able to start his work over again. John thinks there's been enough killing and it's time for plan A, so John takes Esak into a minefield, where they can talk with one another unfettered. Esak knows that he will be asked to alter his course and make amends, but John just wants the villain to hear him out. He knows he doesn't understand the gods and he's been alive for billions of years and wasn't born and won't die. However, Esak is alive and feels things, which is what he can understand. Esak wonders if he thinks the Godstorm has given him some sort of godly insight, but John knows it gave him empathy. He shows Esak his life and how he never wanted this power that has always been inside of him, having Ganther to bury the memory deep in his mind to hide the true nature of himself, but now he knows that they have to change with the universe, whether they like it or not, and Esak isn't evil or insane, he's just terrified of change. Esak doesn't think it's evolution, it's corruption and chaos, but John disagrees, finding it to be life, and whatever happens, he's going to find a way to live that life no matter how hard Esak fights, and he's going to evolve as well, since that's what life is. John asks what Esak is the god of as his power explodes, turning from an orange flame into a bright purple flame as Esak proclaims he is the god of nostalgia. Esak curses John for what he has done to him, and while he may have won this moment, he will destroy him in time. Esak disappears, and 2 days later, Marzel, the city sphere, is moved into orbit above the newly returned Xanshi. John knows that they stopped Esak, but they need to do some major cleanup on what is left behind. The 2 Johns figure they both have half of the power of a full ascended one, and he is fine with it, and it's more than enough power for him. Before they move on, John wants his construct counterpart to take in the fact that they are standing on Xanshi again, all thanks to hypertime. The Johns join hands and the construct's power disappears, but not into John, but into John's guardsmen, with Lonar continued to be surprised at John's journey. Kens doesn't want to stick around in the dark sector any longer than they have to, but this is the type of job she signed up for. The guards wonder what type of job they have though, noting that Phalanx's fate is still undecided, Esak is still an active god, and his engines in more sectors are still running, and the Red Centurions are all over the sector. John knows they are going to deal with all of that, and then he is going to find his wife again, heading out into the dark sector with the Emerald Knights.